Y bien, estamos ahora con el profesor Michael Porter, una autoridad mundial en temas de gerencia, de planificación estratégica. Él es autor de un libro muy conocido, de varios libros, pero hay uno de ellos muy conocido que se llama La competitividad de las naciones, parafraseando un poco a Adam Smith con La riqueza de las naciones. Y bueno, ha venido al Perú, ha estado con el grupo Interbank, en fin, se ha reunido con el propio presidente Humala. Y vamos a conversar con él. Professor Porter, how are you?
Very good, sir. Jaime, nice to be here.
Nice. Well, you've been with President Humala, you've had a conversation with him. Could you tell us what did you talk about?
Well, this is actually the second time I'd met President Humala. Before he was elected, he participated in the CADE meeting last year, and I was very impressed. He sat in the front row and he paid attention the whole time, and he seemed very interested in learning about the economy, and that impression was really reinforced today. We had an extensive discussion about many topics, both in terms of the global economy as well as Peru. He asked a lot of questions, and he listened intently, and I think he's genuinely trying to grasp the way forward for this country, and I think he's, given his background, I think he understands that there's a lot of questions that he has to think about and learn about, and I very much felt that this was part of that process of learning.
Are you worried about the world economic crisis?
I wouldn't say I'm worried. I would say that, in fact, I wouldn't call it a crisis. I would call it a slowdown. I think certainly the economy has been restored. The tremendous restructuring and unemployment problem that affected the U.S. is not likely to be repeated. But I think what's happening is Europe, in particular, is the real drag on the world economy right now. It's the imbalances and the financial unsustainability of the banking system and the debt system in Europe that has caused everybody to be very worried about growth. Most of the companies that I work with, and I'm on many boards and I work with many companies, the companies are doing okay. But there's a lot of uncertainty about what might happen, and since we had the very sharp economic crisis only a few years ago, everybody remembers. So I think the sensitivity and concern now about the future is great, and so I would call it a slowdown. I wouldn't call it a crisis yet.
And how do you see the role of Peru in the economic world, in the division of labor in the world in the next years? With or without this crisis, I don't know. Peru's been growing at a very fast rate, yes. But I don't know if we can sustain that rate, or how do you see our role in the economic world? What should be our path, our
Well, first of all, Jaime, I mean, the reason I'm here is I have a tremendous optimism that Peru can be one of the small handful of countries that is a winner.
Uh-huh.
And I think there's a combination of circumstances. I think over the last decade or decade and a half, there's been enormous progress in Peru. A lot of things got better. A lot of macroeconomic policy improvement took place. A lot of positive steps ignited growth in the country. Now I think there's an opportunity to kind of take the next step and the next stage and really work more on the microeconomic foundations of the economy. The economy right now is still not diversified enough. It's still very heavily dependent on resource sectors. I think those resource sectors are going to be, with ups and downs, they're going to be here for many years to come. But I think the economy is starting to show signs of diversification. As improvement takes place in education and in universities and in the cost of doing business, I'm optimistic that this country will continue to grow. But that said, President Humala's election is a very important transition point. I mean, he's not a president that's historically been associated with business, and so I think everybody's holding their breath right now, trying to see what's happening, what's going to happen. I think there's assumptions being made about the president and his feelings towards business that, and I think he is, at least my impression is he's still forming his opinions. He's still forming his plan. And I was very pleased today at the meeting and in the press conference afterwards that the government and in particular the finance minister introduced some new ideas about competitiveness. And I see the administration now starting to get ready to kind of tackle economic policy. We understand the president cares deeply about social development, about social inclusion, but again, the new thinking about competitiveness is that you can't be competitive unless you have social development. And the two go together. They're not separate. They're not competing agendas. They're complementary agendas. And so I think if the president can keep his passion for social development and then develop a way to work productively with the business community, I think this country has a real opportunity.
Well, some think that President Humala have some mistrust to business, no? What should be the role of business? Could business help in the social inclusion process? Are there enemy of that? What is your vision of?
Well, I think that there are many today in society that have distrust of business. I think that, and I think there's reason for that distrust if you look at the history of how business has actually behaved in countries like Peru. Businesses tended to really try to profit from the system, get special breaks from government, get protection and monopoly and special tax advantages, and I think that that's led to many people, and certainly the people in President Humala's party and that he's worked with throughout his career to have a mistrust of business. But I think that what's happening today is very exciting, and that is, I think business is starting to realize that its narrow model, where it looked only at itself and only at making profit in a narrow way, is actually not the best way to really build a business. That a business needs a healthy society. You can't have a healthy business without a healthy society, and if people are poor, then your business cannot grow. And if people are not healthy, and if people don't have adequate housing and health care and so forth, that's actually not good for a business in the long run. And business is also starting to understand that business itself, through the market system, can address issues like nutrition and health and the environment.
How come?
Because, for example, part of there's a company in Peru that Innova Schools that is building schools, K through 12 schools, and here's a company that is transforming the quality of education, but it's doing it through business. It's doing it through a profit-making model, where creating higher quality curriculum, better trained teachers, better facilities, and more dynamism than the public schools can do. So here's a case where business is addressing a fundamental social challenge, which is improving education. We see that in many areas. We see businesses spearheading the development of small farmers and small producers, helping them improve their yields and improve their crops, because business understands that if the farmers can be more efficient, the business will benefit by having lower cost and more supply of goods. So I think the traditional distinction between business and society, we're starting to see that distinction is a false distinction. And the leading companies now, the Nestle's, the really innovative companies in the world, are starting to follow a philosophy which I have called shared value, where you create economic benefit, profit, but also deal with important social problems.
Are there opportunities for shared value in mining, for example? We have many mines, very big mines. There are many conflicts also, so that would be very important.
Yes. Well, I think that mining is an area that's in a state of flux. I think historically mining has been a business that's caused many social problems. It's led to a lot of environmental pollution, use of water, excessive use of water. Mining has tended to create very isolated communities, separated families from each other. But now the best mining companies have understood that model doesn't work, and that the world-class mining companies, the Anglo-Americans and so forth, they are focused very, very heavily now on how can they provide, appropriate housing and health care for the miners in the mining community? How can they actually use water better? How can they minimize the environmental impact? How can they develop local industry to supply the mine with service and with other products that the mine needs to buy? And they've understood that actually makes their business better and stronger. So mining is an area where I think there's a lot of controversy in Peru, and I know that. And I think a lot of the mining companies in Peru have a lot to learn about how to do their job better. But yet, I think there's a new recognition in the business community that these practices are not good business.
Well, I understand you said that Newmont in Peru has developed that model, that approach. Newmont is now in a very huge problem with some communities, but there is a wide. There are much more people that are in favor of Newmont or of Yanacocha, but still there are problems. Yeah. What is that model? What has Newmont done in Yanacocha?
Well, again, I'm not an expert on the whole Newmont history here in Peru, and I'm sure there's areas that can be improved. The program that caught our eye is a program by Newmont to actually develop local businesses to supply the services and the needs that the mine has. And in the process, they've created thousands of jobs in the community, and jobs that didn't exist before. And they've created many small businesses and helped create those businesses. So here's an example of a mining company understanding that if it's thoughtful and careful, it doesn't just have to buy things from the United States or other countries. It can actually build a Peruvian cluster, as I call it, of firms that can benefit the growth of the whole region and provide employment to many more people that can actually work in the mine. So this is an example of a shared value strategy. It benefits Newmont. They have better access to local supply, more efficient supply, but it also benefits the community through economic development and job creation.
Well, the mining brings the opportunity to develop a very important cluster, industrial cluster, exactly. to sell parts and equipment and machines to them. That could be, but you need to enhance that from the government. What would be the role of the government to develop clusters or to promote shared value in companies?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question, and I think that first of all, the whole idea here is for government to think a little bit differently about its role. First of all, we don't want government to try to direct the economy. The economy needs to be driven by the private sector. It needs to be driven based on market principles, on profit principles. That creates greater efficiency, that creates more innovation. So that's step number one. So what's government's job? Government's job is to create the right environment in which the private sector can grow. And in some cases, government needs to make investments that then allow the private sector to create shared value. So for example, if you want to benefit a group of small farmers living in a rural area, if you want to help them become better producers and and produce more output, maybe you need to build a better road that connects those small farmers in that region to the marketplace. And if the government makes that investment, then it allows the market and shared value to work. So I think of government's role as really creating the enabling conditions by which business then can take over and the market can actually work. And sometimes that's infrastructure, sometimes that's training for workers. Sometimes that's certain kinds of incentives. There's a very interesting incentive that I learned about just today in Peru, where a private sector company is able to take the taxes that it would have paid and perhaps with the permission of government invest that in something like a bridge or a road that creates critical infrastructure that will allow them to grow their business faster. There's an example of government policy that encourages shared values. So, but too many governments think that their job is to tax business, and then business's job is to create social benefit. I was just the other day in Ecuador, and in Ecuador there's a war between business and government, and government wants to take the money from the rich businesses, and then government's job is to take care of the citizens, and I think that's the wrong answer. It fails everywhere in the world. I think government's job is to work collaboratively with business, and ultimately business will be the really driving force behind the economy. And I guess the question is how to get businesses that have grown up in the old world of special favors and government protection and populism, how to get businesses that have grown up in that world to kind of understand that they have a much greater and much more positive role in society. How to get them to step up. Leading companies are doing that now. This is not theoretical, it's happening. But particularly in developing countries, I find that sometimes it takes a while for the mindset of business to change. And I'm optimistic in Peru that there's enough leadership that can happen. I was very encouraged by my experience working on the project that we then presented at the CADE meeting last November. There was a whole consortium of private sector leaders that really sponsored and supported that effort. It was an inclusive effort in which people from all aspects of society were invited to join, and I think that's a very good sign for whether the Peruvian business community is willing and ready to take a new role.
But do you think that our country is following that plan, is in that path? The government is...
I think it's too early to say whether the government is going to follow that path. I think I'm optimistic at this point that it can, that it will. I can tell you I'm sure about the government's commitment to social development, to inclusion, to getting small communities more connected to the economy, to trying to reduce the disparities between the rural areas and the urban areas. I'm sure that this government is committed to that. I think this government is still learning how to interact with the private sector, and it's still learning how to think about the economy and how to grow the economy. And one of the reasons I'm here today is because I think that there's enough signs that if we work at it and if we're patient and if we don't jump to any conclusions, I believe perhaps this government can rise to that, at least to me, rise to that challenge. But again, there's a lot of uncertainty right now in Peru, in the business community, about what's going to happen. And from what I've seen, having spent now time with the president, I don't think the business community should jump to any conclusions too quickly. I think we're in a process, and I think if the business community will step forward and come to the table and be ready to collaborate, I have a good feeling that this government will understand that that's the way to achieve their goals, which is to make the society better.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Michael Porter, for being here. Bien, muchísimas gracias a Michael Porter por su participación en la Hora N. Vamos a una pausa y regresamos.